Got an interesting project coming up for a mate for his little race car. He's got a little Datsun 1200 Coupe. He races in the improved production class, which is an Australian wide class with which they allow you some certain modifications, but they do get a pretty competitive field. You've got all your turbos, rotaries and V8s. So this one here is a Hilux diff that had been fitted to the car, which was going fine. Got some kind of LSD fitted to it, but he wants some rear camber now. So he's bought this kit from Race Products in Queensland. I checked their website out and they've got some pretty cool gear. He supplied this bare housing we can use. That way he keeps this one if he wants to put it straight back in. So this is the one we'll be cutting up. The first thing I'll be doing is making a jig off this one on these spring plates. So I'm going to do the new one that's all in the right spot to suit his spring centres. The blokes at work water jet cut this out and then I just folded it up, because this one here has got to be cut off, and then I'll put these ones in. By the time you cut that off, it's a bit of muck and around, so it's just easy to make new plates. Just got some sway bar mounts as well. They're not hugely important. So I've got this, I want to set this up on a jig and then check the angle from this flange to there, the pinion angle, and I'll just copy that. I'll probably set this one up as well. It'll be interesting to see if it's the same angle. And then he'll just put his centre into that housing. That's a good thing about using the Hilux diffs. So this thing here, this plate in there, you see that bit in there? I think that is the bit that's machined down, which is your centre hub, and that's machined on an angle which I think is 2.5 degrees, so that'll give him that much camber on the rear. You can buy different angle ones, I think. So what I've got to do is I've got to machine all this, work out, or do some calculations, because he wants this one slightly narrower than this one from this face. So once I do the calculations, I've got to cut this off through there somewhere probably, and follow these instructions basically. Machine all this down to fit inside, run a mandrel up through it all, weld it all into place in the right spot, in the right orientation. And weld all these mounts and everything on. So there's a bit of work there. I'll do a bit of filming with it, show how it's all done. I've just taken that cover off. I think once it's all on there, we're going to measure from here to the center, and then they make an axle to suit with these cutouts in the axle, and then these balls must drop into there, and that's how you get your drive through that angle. Quite clever. I pulled this apart, everything, they supply everything basically loose, so you got to assemble it all together. Seems like very high quality gear. I'll put a link up in the description of another channel that does a bit of filming for these events, and he also does a bit more info about some of the cars, so I'll put that out. That's interesting to look at. And we'll get measuring and cutting. So I've just made up this jig. It's just something I whipped up with a bit of second-hand material. I've got a plate on here, and I've turned up some little dowels that locate on the center bolt. that one in there. So just checking the pinion angle now, which looks to be, I'd say 5 degrees. So I will get the other housing on there. These will just sit flat on there. They won't sit on the right spot because I'm going to cut them off, but I can still just check this angle on here. If it's 5 degrees, it'll be interesting to see if it is 5 degrees actually. And then I'll start cutting all these lugs off. So I've just set this one on. I've checked the angle on this one, just off this flange here, which should be the same as the pinion. And this one's about 5 degrees as well, so I think we'll just go with 5 degrees. Next thing is cut all these off. I've just done a heap of calculations. You will want this one 60mm narrower than the original one. So with all the calculations I've done, I've got to cut this off about 90mm in from this end here, about where that mark is, and then machine those pieces to fit inside here. So I've got the ends all cut off. Won't be needing them anymore. Give the whole thing a good clean, got some of the paint off it, so make it look nice and flash. Pulled these covers or baffles out of there just so I can wash them. Got a lot of grit up inside there sticking to the old oil. I'm guessing these are a baffle for oil, stop the oil, too much oil going down the tube, but also probably to line the axle up when you put the axles in. So I'll clip them back in later. So just setting it up now on this jig here. I've got it centralized, I've got 5 degrees angle. I'll go ahead and tack these on. Flip it over and weld it up. And I'll weld the sway bar mounts on as well. They're not hugely important where they go, as long as it's somewhere where those ones are. Alright, so I got them welded. Now I'm on to the next stage. So that's machining these down to fit inside there. I've just spoke to these guys on the phone, Race Products. They're pretty good to deal with, nice to talk to. Give me a few pointers about some of the machining, how they did it. So they go to about 15mm from this face to there, which was pretty close to what I worked out. They give a minimum distance from this flange here, which is 123mm from there to there, so I've marked that off, and that was about 14-15mm. I'll stick to that. I've got to turn the diameter of this down to suit this tube, which is fine as long as I put a good radius stand in there. And the inside I'm going to bore out on a slight taper. Now I don't have the mandrel that they use to mount these on, which they actually have a flange on their mandrel that these bolt to on each end of the diff, and they're welded in place. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to set it all up in the lathe, probably get them all dialed in and then tack them in place in the lathe. Take it out, weld it, then put it back in and just take a little skim off here, and that should be fine. So I've just done some measuring with a telescopic gauge and a micrometer. I'll come up with about 61.2 inside. It's actually a little bit out of round, probably from the welding here, and it's not a machine tube, so as long as it's just a slide fit in there, I don't think you don't want to be too tight. So I've just got it set up in the lathe here. Using the 4 jaw, I wanted to grab it right on the end. and the 4-jaw does grip a lot better. So I've just dialed that in with a dial gauge on this surface and that surface. I can start machining. So that's all the machining done. Wasn't too bad. Put a nice big radius in this corner here. Probably didn't need to be that big, but it's not going to hurt. Got a bit of ward prep on there. This ended up boring out on an angle, so it's tapered. I think about 3 degrees. That's 55 this side, about 48 in here. Should tap in there. Just going to drill some holes in here for plug welds now. I'm just going to weld these sway bar mounts on and then set this up in the lathe to tack these in place. Alrighty then, I've got the some holes drilled for some plug welds. End up putting 3 of them around there. Decent sized hole, nice and countersunk, so you can get the TIG in there and fill it up. So I've got this one, it's hard up against the chuck jaw there, so that's on 0, and I just put the dial gauge on there as well. Now, they talk about one of these holes, it's got to be at 12 o'clock on the diff, so I've just set that in the middle of the chuck jaw, 0 the gauge on there. And then zeroed it on here, underneath here. Just moved it around until I got 0, and then just puts a bit of pressure on the tailstock just to lock it off. I'll get the TIG set up now and run a few tacks around there and flip it over. So I just got this side welded. I end up welding it in the lathe where it's sitting. So that welded up pretty nice. Now just tack that one. Getting well done up. I'll let it cool down and then probably come over here and check this face here and then maybe take a skim off it, then flip it over and take a skim off the other side, and we'll be that done. Got all that welded, just it's nearly cooled down now, so just set this up to face this end. It's actually not far out, only got to take a little skim off it. Just got a positive brake insert in there, try and get a nice finish because there's actually no ring that seals down on that. A little bit more of a cut, feed on, So I'm just back at my shed now. All that previous work, all the machining I did at where I work. Pretty lucky the boss lets us do that sort of work there. Comes in pretty handy. So I've just set this together. You can see the camber on it. So this one here is set is a 2.5 degree plate, which is this part here, which is your spindle. So when you want to change the camber, I think you can buy different degree ones. I'll just pull that one apart, have a look. So you can turn this plate around depending on where you want your brake caliper. And you got your nut, which comes with a spanner, a tool, set your preload. Got a locking ring. And then this one here is your plate where it gets its drive through there. So I'm pretty happy with the way it's turned out. Plenty of weld on there. As you can see, I did all this with a TIG. They recommend the TIG, but you can MIG it, but I just prefer TIG. Now I've got the owner coming down shortly. He's going to bring a caliper down. He's running Skyline calipers on this one, so I want to see if we can work out where we can put some mounts to hold the brake hoses, stuff like that. Let's see what else we need to do. The same as this one. I noticed this one's got these threads on it. I'm not sure if we need them or not. So I thought I might as well do all the welding to it now before I put some paint on it, and that's it, you can take it. And there we have it. Put a bit of etch primer over there. I welded these on. These are for P-clips for the brake lines, braided brake lines. Just painted with this paint here. It's a Ford colour. That's alright. It's a bit of metallic. Looks pretty smart. Not that you'll see it, but anyway. So the next thing we've got to do is measure up for the axles. So I've got this diff here just jacked up, just draining the oil out of it. Hoist comes in handy. So we just got to pop these axles out enough to get this center out, and then we'll bolt this center, or sit this center in here, and then we've got to get a measurement from, take this cover off, and then get a measurement from here into the diff center. I do supply a little plastic spacer that goes in the end of the axle to stop the axle touching this cover, and then there's some aluminium spacers they supply, which I think is going to be maybe machined down to suit once the axles arrive. So I've just machined these spacers down. Now we've got the axles. We knew what length to make these for the clearance for the floating axle. They run on the inside of the axle, inside the diff center, like that. And then these black ones here run on the outside and just sit up against the red cap. So hopefully I'll get some pictures of it all going together, and then maybe get some footage out at the racetrack. Cool. So another job I had to do was this lip on these new wheels he's got that normally holds the center cap. I've had to machine these out just so it's a straight ball right through, just to clear that little red cap on the new diff center, the cap that holds the axles in. So he didn't run the cap anyway, so I've just set this up in the mill here. I've got 4 of them to do. To make it quicker and easier to set up, I just made this little mandrel that fits into there, locates it, clamp it down, and pretty much clocked in. And then I can just start taking cuts with the boring head and adjust it out. It's a deep cut, but that'll cut through there. I can set the feed up on this machine. I'll just slowly bring that round. I can increase it or decrease it. So I've done these couple. Some work wheels, nice looking rim. Really suits his car too. Wind the speed up and down as well. Now we have it all done. So I think that's about it for me. The customer's going to put it all back together, put the diff together. I'll see if I can get some pictures of that and see how he goes with the setup. It's been an interesting job. I've enjoyed it, working on something like this. I've also, like I said, I'll put some links up, some other channels, and where you can get the gear from for that, for the diff parts. Thanks for watching.